Story begins in a world located beneath our Earth known as the Hollow Earth. Here, the bizarre gravity and deadly radiation have turned animals into giant, vicious monsters. Deep in the dense jungles of the Hollow Earth, Kong is running for his life. Right behind him, a massive pack of vicious wild dogs is chasing him like death itself. Kong sprints and stands at the edge of a very high cliff. He had already prepared a death trap for these savage beasts there. Kong grabs a heavy tree trunk and slams it on the trap, causing massive heavy boulders to rain down from the mountain and crush the wild dogs. However, even after taking such a brutal hit from the rocks, the dogs don't give up and charge forward to tear Kong apart. Seeing this, Kong gets furious. He grabs one vicious dog and rips it in half. The dog's warm blood splatters all over Kong's face and body. Covered in blood, Kong lets out such a terrifying roar that the rest of the dogs get scared and run away with their tails between their legs. Afterward, Kong goes to a nearby waterfall and washes his blood-stained body. Just as he starts eating the dead dog's meat, he suddenly feels a terrible pain in his tooth and starts writhing in agony. At that exact moment, he hears a very strange roar from a distance. Kong gets distracted, and seeing the opportunity, a giant lizard steals his meat and runs away. In fact, Kong has been living completely alone for years, so hearing that strange noise makes him think there might be someone else like him out there. Hoping for the best, he follows the sound. However, when he gets there, he realizes it isn't a giant creature, but just a tiny frog. Seeing this, all of Kong's hopes are shattered. Meanwhile, on the surface, Dr. Eileen works for an agency called Monarch. This agency keeps an eye on giant monsters around the world. Eileen is very worried about Kong because he isn't used to being alone. At the same time, a giant spider-like monster enters the city of Rome and starts causing massive destruction. Suddenly, Godzilla arrives and directly attacks the spider. A dangerous fight breaks out between the two, and several large buildings are reduced to rubble. Godzilla slams the monster hard onto the ground and uses his atomic breath to burn it to ashes. After letting out a glorious roar of victory, Godzilla goes to the Colosseum in Rome and falls into a deep sleep. Back at a Monarch base in the Hollow Earth, scientists receive a very powerful energy signal from the pit where Kong set his trap. Eileen is immediately informed, and she travels straight to Barbados. There, Director Hampton shows her massive energy spikes on the computer. Meanwhile, at the Monarch Academy, Eileen's adopted daughter, Gia, is sitting in her class when she suddenly gets dizzy. She then has a very scary vision of a monster. The teacher wakes Gia up, and Gia sees that she has drawn strange lines all over her desk and books. Eileen talks to Gia in sign language, and Gia tells her she's very worried about Kong. She feels like she doesn't belong in this world. It turns out Gia is the only surviving girl from the ancient Iwi tribe of Skull Island. When Eileen goes back home, she notices that the lines Gia drew perfectly match the signal that came from the Hollow Earth. At that exact moment, down in the Hollow Earth, a dangerous monster attacks the Monarch base and completely destroys it. Because of the scary nightmare, Gia suddenly wakes up, and Eileen hugs her to calm her down. The next day, Eileen travels to Miami and meets a podcaster named Bernie, who had previously helped with monster cases. Bernie agrees to help, but only on the condition that he gets to go inside the Hollow Earth too. Suddenly, another signal alert goes off on Eileen's phone. This signal is so strong that even Godzilla feels it deep in the ocean. Godzilla wakes up from his sleep and runs from Rome toward the sea, causing chaos in the city. Meanwhile, the main door of the base opens and everyone starts running around in fear. But then Kong comes out of it. He is suffering greatly from the severe pain in his tooth. The scientists quickly sedate Kong, and a doctor named Trapper arrives in his special flying ship. He pulls out Kong's bad tooth and replaces it with a very strong iron tooth. Bernie explains to Eileen that this energy signal is actually a cry for help from inside the Hollow Earth. Hearing this, Hampton orders a team to be sent down without delay. Eileen, Bernie, Trapper, Gia, and pilot Mikael get into a super fast ship and dive into the path to the Hollow Earth right behind Kong. The ship starts passing through bright lights and heavy turbulence, which makes Bernie scream in fear. In a matter of moments, they all arrive inside the mysterious world of the Hollow Earth. At the same time, soldiers find huge footprints of Godzilla at a burning nuclear plant in France. Godzilla is absorbing the radiation energy of the plant, causing his body to glow blue. Monarch jets attack Godzilla, but in a single strike, he knocks them all out of the sky and uses his blue energy to burn them to ashes. Hampton tells Eileen on the phone that Godzilla is preparing for a massive war, but suddenly the line cuts off. Eileen's team arrives at the destroyed base in the Hollow Earth. All the scientists are dead, and the whole place is reduced to rubble. On the wall, there's a massive, bloody handprint, but it definitely doesn't belong to Kong. Trapper points out that this mark is an open challenge for a huge fight. Underneath the debris, the team finds a security camera. Inside the ship, Eileen checks the camera footage and discovers that a vicious, red-furred ape destroyed the base. Suddenly, a massive energy shockwave hits them, and the ship starts plummeting. However, Mikhail somehow regains control. Gia senses exactly where the energy is coming from. They land the ship and start following Gia through the dense jungle. Along the way, Trapper smells something weird and tells everyone to turn back, but a stubborn Mikhail keeps walking forward. At that moment, a giant tree-like monster swallows Mikhail alive. Seeing this, the team runs for their lives. Eileen pulls out her radio for help, but it's completely dead. After wandering for a while, Gia finds ancient ruins belonging to the old Iwi tribe. On a wall, there's a painting of the queen monster, Mothra. Gia presses a triangular symbol on the wall, and water starts flowing from it. Right behind the water is a magical barrier that glows when touched. Gia pushes the barrier aside, and they all step into a mysterious world. Suddenly, Eileen's team is surrounded by spear-wielding warriors. However, they recognize Gia and lead the whole team inside a glowing cave. This is the home of the Iwi tribe, where people can read each other's minds without speaking a single word. The cave's ceiling has several circular portals that can transport them anywhere in the world. The tribe's queen steps forward and holds Gia's hand, and they share their memories. The queen is happy and releases Eileen and the rest of the team. As they walk further, the team finds a massive crystal. Eileen instantly realizes that this is the crystal that sent the distress signal to Godzilla. The walls are covered in the history of the Iwi tribe. Eileen reads that, a long time ago, giant apes used to protect humans, but a dangerous leader named Skar King started a rebellion and picked a fight with Godzilla. Back then, Godzilla locked Skar King and his army inside the Hollow Earth forever. Now, that same old threat is returning, and Godzilla is preparing to fight it. The Iwi Queen explains that waking the queen monster, Mothra, from her slumber can only be done by a human from the Iwi tribe. Meanwhile, Kong picks up his magical axe and jumps right into the deep pit where the signal was coming from. Inside, he finds glowing rocks and the bones of creatures just like him. From a distance, Kong hears a roar again. He crosses a waterfall and enters a completely new and unknown world. There, a shadow moves quickly toward him. Kong gets ready to fight, but it turns out to be just a small ape named Suko. Kong tries to approach him peacefully, but Suko bites his hand hard and screams to call the other apes. Moments later, several vicious apes ambush Kong, snatch his axe, and start attacking him with it. Kong pushes them away with all his might. Suko leaps at Kong's face, but Kong catches him mid-air and literally uses Suko like a baseball bat to beat down the other apes. During the brawl, one ape is about to fall off a cliff, but Kong grabs his hand and saves him. However, the treacherous ape tries to stab Kong with a sharp knife. Kong's anger hits the roof, and he kicks the ape straight down the abyss. The last surviving ape runs away in fear, but Kong hurls a heavy rock and hits him with a brutal headshot. Afterward, Kong roars loudly at Suko and orders him to lead the way. Suko takes Kong to a lake. Just as Kong leans in to drink some water, a ferocious snake bursts out from under the surface and tightly wraps its long body around him. The snake starts crushing Kong's bones. Seeing an opportunity, Suko tries to escape, but Kong's axe comes flying through the air and blocks his path. In a single swift move, Kong had already sliced the snake's head completely off its body. Kong happily eats the snake's meat and even shares a piece with Suko, which leaves the little ape completely shocked. Meanwhile, in Spain, Godzilla crushes the entire city in his path before returning to the sea. A Monarch submarine tracks him and discovers he's heading straight for the Arctic Ocean. That's the home of a highly vicious monster named Tiamat. If Godzilla kills her, he can absorb all her energy and become even more powerful. Once in the Arctic, Godzilla uses his atomic breath to blast through the thick ice. Moments later, Tiamat emerges, glowing with a bright pink light. She wraps her body tightly around Godzilla, but he fights back and rips a massive chunk of flesh right off her. Tiamat tries to counterattack, but Godzilla starts absorbing her energy and fires a blinding blue beam. In a matter of seconds, the powerful Tiamat is blown to pieces. Afterward, Godzilla enters her lair to soak up all the leftover energy. Down in the Hollow Earth, Kong follows Suko across a bridge made of bones and arrives at a scorching hot place. There, Kong is shocked to see thousands of apes enslaved and forced to carry massive boulders. When a guard violently kicks a weak ape, Kong loses his temper. He marches right up and punches the guard in the face so hard he hits the ground. Then Kong lets out a massive roar, calling out their leader. Suddenly, a tall red ape steps out of the shadows. It's none other than the Skar King, the dangerous monster Godzilla imprisoned here years ago. Seeing Kong's iron tooth, the Skar King mocks him relentlessly, causing the rest of the apes to laugh. Enraged, the Skar King lunges forward to kill Suko, but the weak ape jumps in to save him. Without hesitation, the Skar King delivers a brutal kick, sending the poor ape falling straight into a pit of boiling lava. Furious, Kong grabs his axe and charges at the Skar King. In response, the Skar King pulls out a terrifying whip made from a monster's spine. The whip wraps tightly around Kong's neck, choking him. However, Kong refuses to give up. Using his massive strength, he launches the Skar King into the air and slams him away. At that moment, the Skar King reveals a glowing crystal attached to his whip and summons a colossal ice monster named Shimo. The crystal inflicts terrible pain on Shimo, and because of this pain, she is the Skar King's slave. Following orders, Shimo blasts Kong with a freezing ice breath. Kong tries to block it with his axe, but the cold is so intense that his entire right arm instantly freezes, leaving him with severe frostbite. Overcome with pain, Kong collapses to the ground. Just then, Suko points toward a nearby cave. Running for his life, Kong bolts straight toward the cave. To catch him, the rest of the apes immediately chase after him. Navigating through the cave tunnels, Kong makes it back into the hollow earth jungle. He deliberately runs through the exact same path where he set his traps, causing several pursuing apes to get caught and killed. As he keeps running, Kong eventually gets trapped near a massive boulder, and the remaining apes close in on him. But right at that moment, Suko secretly drops a heavy net of rocks from above, crushing the remaining enemies underneath. Kong is writhing in pain, and Suko desperately tries to guide him toward the human settlement. Meanwhile, one red ape manages to escape the trap and secretly follows them from the shadows. On the other side, Gia is feeling very much at peace hanging out with the children of the Iwi tribe. Bernie is busy recording this magical place with his camera. Suddenly, a loud siren goes off, and the Iwi people drop their magical barrier. Outside stands Kong, groaning in pain with his arm completely frozen solid. Seeing Kong there, the red ape that secretly followed them immediately runs off to inform the Skar King. Following this, the Skar King rallies his entire army, mounts Shimo's back, and sets off to launch a direct attack on the human world. Meanwhile, in the Arctic Ocean, Godzilla smashes through the thick layer of ice and steps out. Now, instead of his usual blue color, Godzilla's entire body is radiating a dangerous, bright pink light. Back down below, Kong is in terrible shape and collapses to the ground. Trapper quickly approaches and uses his machine to scan Kong's arm. He tells everyone that he had previously designed an amazing project called Operation Powerhouse to boost Kong's strength. Trapper rushes over to the destroyed base and retrieves a massive weapon. He carefully fits the heavy mechanical gauntlet onto Kong's frozen arm. The moment a green liquid injects from the weapon into Kong's hand, it heals his arm instantly. Thrilled, Kong wiggles his fingers and punches the ground so hard that the entire earth shakes. At that exact moment, Suko comes running in and warns them about the Skar King's dangerous attack. Without wasting a single second, Kong leaps straight into a portal. The very next moment, Kong tears through the ground in the middle of the pyramids in Egypt and lets out a deafening roar. Hearing his terrifying roar, the people present run for their lives. Over in Gibraltar, Godzilla hears Kong's loud roar. He instantly dives into the water and starts swimming toward Kong at full speed. Down in the hollow earth, the Iwi people take Gia to a massive crystal. Gia affectionately places her hand on the crystal, releasing a golden energy that wakes the queen monster Mothra straight from her deep sleep. Mothra looks at Gia with her bright eyes and immediately takes flight toward the surface. Afterward, all the Iwi people evacuate their cave and head to a safe place. Godzilla tears through the water and arrives straight in Egypt. Kong tries his best to explain the situation, but Godzilla completely misunderstands, thinking Kong is there to attack him. He charges and lands a massive hit, sending Kong flying through the air and crashing straight into a pyramid. A brutal fight breaks out between the two. Kong uses his new iron arm to rain down a flurry of heavy punches right on Godzilla's face. Then, Kong grabs Godzilla's thick tail and starts dragging him toward the portal. But suddenly, Godzilla's back lights up, and he unleashes his pink atomic breath, burning several pyramids to ashes. Godzilla grabs Kong, slams him to the ground, and steps up to finish him off. But at that exact moment, Queen Mothra arrives and pushes Godzilla away. Gia is standing right there with Mothra, and using their telepathic connection, they show Godzilla the absolute truth. Realizing his mistake, Godzilla backs down and lets out a massive roar, agreeing to team up with Kong. Meanwhile, Eileen's team and the Iwi people have reached the lower section of the pyramid. There, they pour a red liquid into the water. As soon as the water turns red, all the crystals start shaking, and the gravity begins to shift. But right at that moment, the Skar King rips through the magical barrier and breaks inside. He gives Shimo the order, and Shimo starts freezing all the crystals with her ice breath. Trapper instantly fires up his ship and unleashes a swarm of weird flying creatures onto the ape army. Those creatures start zapping the apes with intense electric shocks. Trapper quickly gets his team onto the ship and tries to escape, but Shimo uses her ice breath to blast those creatures away. Right then, Kong and Godzilla arrive on the scene, and without wasting a single second, they launch a brutal attack on the Skar King and Shimo. At that exact moment, the crystal's magic kicks in, and the gravity completely disappears. All four monsters start floating in the air, but even while floating in zero gravity, they are absolutely hammering each other with punches and kicks. One of the Skar King's vicious apes leaps to destroy Trapper's ship, but Queen Mothra blasts him away. Suddenly, Suko jumps into the fight, throwing massive boulders at the apes and crushing them. Shimo fires her ice breath at Godzilla right in midair, but Mothra distracts Shimo, giving Godzilla the chance to shatter the ice with his pink energy. Meanwhile, Kong swiftly snatches his axe back from the Skar King. Just then, another portal opens up, sucking all 4 monsters inside and dumping them straight onto the beaches of Brazil. As soon as they land in Brazil, the ocean water instantly freezes into solid ice, and all 4 monsters burst out of it. Seeing this terrifying sight, the people on the beach scream and run for their lives. The Skar King orders Shimo to freeze the entire city. Godzilla immediately blasts Shimo with his atomic breath. At the same second, Kong throws a full power punch straight to the Skar King's face, knocking one of his teeth right out. The 4 monsters start grabbing and slamming each other into skyscrapers, reducing dozens of massive buildings to piles of rubble. Using his bone whip, the Skar King literally hurls an entire building at Kong and then teams up with Shimo to take him down. But Kong raises his mechanical arm and completely blocks Shimo's freezing ice breath. Godzilla charges up with all his might and fires a massive blast straight at the Skar King. The Skar King counters with his whip, but Godzilla catches the whip right in his jaws. Then, Godzilla tosses the Skar King into the air and snaps the whip in half. The moment the whip breaks, the glowing crystal falls to the ground. Meanwhile, Kong is struggling against Shimo's ice. Godzilla fires another blast to keep the crystal away from the Skar King, and then lunges at Shimo. Kong and the Skar King scramble frantically, fighting like crazy to get their hands on that crystal. But suddenly, Suko arrives on the scene, grabs Kong's axe, and brings it down on the crystal with such a massive strike that it shatters into pieces. The second the crystal shatters, a massive shockwave blasts out, pushing all the monsters back. Shimo instantly realizes that she is finally free from the Skar King's control. After that, Kong and Godzilla team up and absolutely batter the Skar King, tossing him around in the air like a tennis ball. Shimo steps up to get her revenge, blasting the Skar King with her ice breath and freezing him completely solid. Kong lifts the frozen Skar King high into the air and, with one brutal slam, smashes him into the ground, shattering him into 1,000 pieces. Then, Godzilla looks up at the sky and unleashes his atomic breath, blasting away all the dark clouds and clearing the sky. After this epic and dangerous war comes to an end, Mothra brings Gia back to the Hollow Earth, but Gia decides to stay with Eileen. Mothra repairs the magical barrier, and Godzilla heads back to the Colosseum in Rome to get some peaceful sleep. Kong and Suko proudly ride on Shimo's back and return to their tribe. Seeing them, all the enslaved apes bow their heads in respect. Kong steps up and becomes their new savior and absolute leader. And with that, this story comes to an end right here. Let us know what you thought of this video in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video. Until then, goodbye.